What happens when forbidden love turns into a deadly secret? The clock ticks softly in the silence. A classroom door stands slightly open. Inside, Ms. Julia Kowalski stands alone at the chalkboard. Her hand moves deliberately, writing neat letters across the board. Final assignments. She pauses, glancing at her reflection in the window, the chalk dust lingering in the air like secrets waiting to settle. Her expression shifts, an almost imperceptible crack in her composed demeanor. Her smile, carefully practiced, fades for just a second before returning, as if masking something much darker. The scene cuts abruptly to a lively parent-teacher night in the school gymnasium. Voices overlap, chairs scrape, and the air hums with polite chatter. Among the crowd stands Adam Novak, a tall and charismatic single father. His casual confidence sets him apart from the sea of anxious parents. He scans the room casually, until his gaze lands on Julia, standing at a table, flipping through a stack of student reports. The moment is electric. Their eyes meet, and time seems to stop. Julia's polished smile falters again, but only for a moment. She turns back to her papers, though her mind is elsewhere. Adam smirks slightly, as if already anticipating their next encounter. Their first conversation happens during the final moments of the event. Julia is stacking her papers, preparing to leave, when Adam approaches her, his footsteps purposeful but unhurried. "Ms. Kowalski," he says, his voice warm and rich. Julia looks up, her usual professional demeanor intact. "Yes, Mr. Novak, how can I help you?" "Adam," he corrects, offering his hand. "I just wanted to thank you for your guidance with Sophia. She speaks highly of you." Julia shakes his hand, her grip firm but her pulse quickening. "Sophia is a wonderful student. You've raised a bright young woman." There's a moment of silence, charged with something unspoken. Adam's smile deepens and he leans in slightly. "If you ever need a parent's perspective, I'd be happy to help." Julia's response is automatic, her words neutral, but her tone carries a subtle warmth. "I'll keep that in mind." That night, as Julia drives home, she can't shake the memory of Adam's piercing gaze or the way her heart raced when their hands touched. Their connection deepens quickly. A chance encounter at the local coffee shop leads to a long conversation over steaming cups of espresso. Julia learns that Adam, despite his charm, carries a quiet sadness. Since his divorce, he's struggled with the weight of raising Sophia alone. Julia, in turn, shares her frustrations, the monotony of her life, the endless cycle of teaching and going home to an empty apartment. And Dandibot. Their meetings become deliberate. At first, they justify them as harmless, a parent-teacher relationship taken slightly beyond school grounds. But soon, their conversations are laced with flirtation, their smiles lingering too long, their touches becoming increasingly bold. One rainy evening, Adam texts Julia, "Meet me tonight?" Her fingers hover over her phone's keyboard before she types back, "Where?" That night, they sit in his car on a quiet street, rain streaking the windows. Their first kiss is hesitant, almost shy, but it quickly ignites into something neither of them can control. From then on, their affair becomes a carefully guarded secret. They exchange knowing glances in hallways, communicate through coded messages, and meet at rented motel rooms far from the prying eyes of their small town. Each stolen moment feels exhilarating, yet Julia can't ignore the creeping sense of dread every time she walks back into her classroom, her mind replaying the night before. It doesn't take long for Sophia Novak to notice the changes. At first, it's little things. Her father's frequent late nights, the faint scent of perfume on his clothes, or the way he seems distracted during dinner. But then she notices her teacher Julia acting strangely too. During a class discussion, Julia stumbles over her words when Sophia asks a question. At a school assembly, Sophia catches her father and Julia exchanging a look, quick but unmistakable. The final piece falls into place one evening when Sophia picks up her father's jacket from the couch. The scent of vanilla and jasmine clings to the fabric, the same perfume Julia wears. Sophia's suspicions solidify. She begins watching them closely, piecing together the puzzle. Her father's happiness, Julia's nervous glances, the late-night phone calls. It all points to one undeniable truth. But Sophia doesn't confront them, not yet. Instead, she starts to plan her next move. unaware that the truth she uncovers will spiral into a web of lies, betrayal, and violence. It begins on a quiet evening. The streets are dimly lit, the golden glow of streetlights bouncing off the puddles from a recent rain. Sophia had been suspicious for weeks, her instincts telling her that the small pieces of the puzzle were leading to a much bigger betrayal. She couldn't let it go anymore. That evening, she decides to follow her father. Pretending to study in her room, she watches from her window as Adam quietly grabs his car keys and slips out the door. Her heart pounds as she grabs her jacket and trails him on foot, staying far enough behind to avoid detection. Sophia's suspicions are confirmed when she spots her father walking into a cozy, dimly lit cafe. Through the rain-streaked window, she sees him sit across from Julia. Her teacher is laughing softly, leaning in just a little too close. The sight of them together sends a surge of anger and betrayal through her. Sophia storms into the cafe, her wet sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Both Adam and Julia freeze, their expressions shifting from surprise to panic. "Put you," Sophia hisses, her voice trembling with fury. "You're my teacher, and you're my dad." Julia's face turns pale as she stammers, "Please, let me explain." "No, there's nothing to explain." Sophia's voice rises, drawing the attention of a few nearby patrons. "You're disgusting. Both of you. Do you have any idea how this feels?" Adam tries to calm her, his voice low and pleading. "Sophia, please, lower your voice. Let's talk about this." But Sophia is beyond reasoning. "You want to talk? Fine. I'll talk. To the school, to Mom. Everyone's going to know what you've done." With that, she storms out of the cafe, leaving Adam and Julia sitting in stunned silence. The weight of her threat lingers in the air like a ticking time bomb. Back at Julia's apartment, the tension is palpable. Adam paces the room, running his hands through his hair, while Julia sits on the couch, her face buried in her hands. "This is a disaster," Julia says, her voice cracking. "If Sophia tells anyone I'm finished, my career, my life, everything I've worked for, it's all over." Adam sighs heavily. "I'll talk to her. I'll apologize. Try to make her understand." Julia snaps her head up, her eyes filled with desperation. "Apologize? Adam, she's furious. She's not going to listen to you. She's already made up her mind." "Then what do you suggest?" Adam asks, his voice rising in frustration. "We can't let this spiral out of control." Julia's expression hardens. "We need to stop her before she does anything. Just talk to her somewhere private, somewhere she can't make a scene." Adam hesitates, unease creeping into his voice. "You're not suggesting—" "I'm not saying we hurt her," Julia interjects quickly, though her tone betrays a hint of doubt. "Just get her to see reason. We meet her somewhere isolated. We explain everything calmly. Make her see that exposing us will ruin all of our lives, including hers." Adam looks unconvinced, but Julia presses on. "We don't have another choice. If she goes to the school or her mom, it's over for both of us." Reluctantly, Adam nods. "All right, I'll talk to her, arrange a meeting. But Julia, this has to work. No more lies, no more games." Julia forces a smile, but as Adam turns away, her expression darkens. In her mind, the plan is already taking shape, and it's far more dangerous than Adam realizes. The cold wind rustles the bare branches of the trees as dusk settles over the secluded hiking trail. The faint crunch of gravel underfoot echoes as Adam and Julia stand, waiting, their faces pale and tense. Julia clutches her coat tightly, her mind racing with how to control what's about to unfold. Sophia arrives moments later, her expression hard and wary. She stops a few feet away, her arms crossed defensively. "This better be good," she says, her voice icy. Julia steps forward, attempting a warm smile, but it doesn't reach her eyes. "Sophia, we just want to talk, to clear the air and explain ourselves." Sophia narrows her eyes. "Talk? You had plenty of time to explain when I caught you both. Why now?" Unbeknownst to them, Sophia's phone is recording every word, tucked discreetly into her jacket pocket. Her instincts told her not to trust them, and this meeting only fuels her suspicion. Julia begins weaving her web of manipulation, her voice soft and pleading. "Sophia, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But think about what exposing us will do. To your father, to your family. It'll tear everything apart. Sophia's jaw tightens and she shakes her head. You mean what it'll do to you. Don't act like you care about me or my family. You're just scared of losing your job, your reputation. Well, maybe you should have thought of that before sleeping with my dad. The tension escalates, the air heavy with unspoken threats. Adam steps in, his voice desperate. Sophia, please. This isn't just about Julia. If this gets out, my life is over too. Can't we work this out? But Sophia is unmoved. Work this out? The only thing I want is for you both to face the consequences. You can't just sweep this under the rug. She turns to leave, but Adam, panicked, grabs her arm. Wait, Sophia, don't walk away from this. Sophia jerks her arm away, her voice sharp and defiant. Don't touch me. I'm done with both of you. She takes a step backward, glaring at them both. But her foot catches on a loose rock. Her balance falters as she stumbles backward, her arms flailing. In the split second it takes for Adam and Julia to react, Sophia's head strikes a jagged rock protruding from the ground. The sound is sickening. For a moment, everything goes silent except for the rustle of the wind. Adam and Julia stare in horror as Sophia lies motionless, her head bleeding onto the cold earth. Adam drops to his knees beside her, shaking her shoulder. Sophia! Sophia, wake up! But there's no response. Her chest doesn't rise. Her eyes remain closed. She's gone, Julia whispers, her voice trembling. Oh my God, she's gone. Adam looks up at Julia, panic and guilt etched across his face. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was an accident. Julia takes a shaky breath, her eyes darting around. It was an accident, she says, her tone shifting. But we can't let anyone find out about this. If they do, they'll think we killed her on purpose. We'll lose everything. What are you saying? Adam asks, his voice cracking. Julia crouches beside him, her gaze cold and calculating. We stage it. Make it look like she slipped while hiking. It's the only way to protect ourselves. Adam hesitates, staring at Sophia's lifeless body. I don't know, Julia. This feels wrong. Julia snaps, her voice sharp and commanding. Adam, it's too late for guilt. If we call the police now, they'll destroy us. Do you want to go to prison? Do you want your daughter's death to ruin both our lives? Adam's shoulders slump as he finally nods, defeated. Fine, let's do it. Under Julia's direction, they drag Sophia's body to a steeper section of the trail, placing her carefully to make it look like she had tripped and fallen. They wipe away any traces of their presence, erasing footprints and ensuring there's nothing left behind. As they walk away, leaving Sophia behind in the growing darkness, Adam looks back one last time. We didn't mean for this to happen, he murmurs, almost to himself. Julia, walking ahead, doesn't respond. Her face is emotionless, her mind already spinning with how to keep their story straight. But what neither of them knows is that Sophia's phone, tucked safely in her pocket, is still recording. Every word they said, every desperate confession has been captured, waiting to resurface and expose the truth they're trying so hard to bury. The news of Sophia Novak's tragic death spreads like wildfire through the small town. Whispers fill the air, and the once peaceful community is shaken to its core. What had seemed like a harmless hike turned into a fatal accident. Or so it seemed. But as the days pass, the authorities begin to ask questions. There are no signs of foul play at the scene, but something about the whole situation doesn't sit right with Detective Kazmarek. He digs deeper, examining every detail, every possible lead. The investigation is slow, but the pressure mounts as suspicions grow. Meanwhile, Julia and Adam play their parts flawlessly. Julia, ever the composed teacher, presents herself as a grieving woman, devastated by the loss of a student. She attends memorial services, speaks to the press with the perfect amount of sadness, and comforts Adam, who appears heartbroken but struggling with the loss of his daughter. Adam, too, shows the world a broken man. His eyes are red from sleepless nights, and he carries the weight of a father who has lost everything. No one would suspect the dark secret they harbor. They both believe they've covered their tracks. The phone call they shared, the manipulation, the staging of Sophia's death, everything seems to have worked. They're certain they've gotten away with it. But that false sense of security doesn't last long. It's a quiet Wednesday afternoon when the call comes. Julia's heart races as she answers her phone, her blood running cold when she hears the voice on the other end. "Ms. Kowalski, we need you to come down to the station for questioning." Detective Kazmarek's voice is calm, but the weight of his words hangs heavily in the air. A pit forms in Julia's stomach, but she hides it behind a practiced mask of confusion. "Questioning? What is this about? I've already cooperated with the police." "We'll explain everything when you arrive. Please, come in." The line goes dead before she can ask any more questions. Julia's hands tremble as she hangs up, her mind racing. The sinking feeling intensifies and the dread gnaws at her insides. She tries to push the thought away. Surely it's nothing, but as she drives to the station, she can't shake the feeling that everything is about to come crashing down. When she arrives, she's ushered into a sterile interrogation room. Detective Kazmarek sits across from her, his demeanor calm but piercing. He doesn't waste time with pleasantries. "We know about the recording, Miss Kowalski," he says flatly. Julia's blood runs cold. "Recording? What do you mean?" The detective slides a piece of paper across the table. It's a transcript of the conversation from the hike, the one she and Adam thought they had carefully covered up. Every word they'd spoken, every admission of guilt, every plan to silence Sophia. It's all there. Her heart skips a beat as she reads the chilling words, unable to believe her eyes. Before Sophia died, she recorded everything. She sent it to a trusted friend, the detective continues, his voice steady but full of unspoken gravity. Her instructions were clear. If anything happened to her, the recording was to be given to the police. Julia's throat tightens, and for the first time since the incident, she feels truly trapped. There's no escaping this. The truth is out there now, and there's nothing she can do to stop it. The detective leans in slightly, his gaze unwavering. "We have the recording, Ms. Kowalski. You and Adam are both implicated in her death, and it's all on tape." A flood of panic rises within Julia as she realizes the full extent of her mistake. She's been played. Sophia had outsmarted them all along. Sophia had known exactly what they would do. She had prepared herself for the worst, and in her final moments she had ensured that justice would find them. Julia is left speechless, unable to process the enormity of what's happening. She's arrested, her mind spinning with the consequences of her actions. Adam's fate is sealed too, but she can't bring herself to think about it. As the investigation progresses, more details emerge. The police confirm that Sophia had indeed sent the recording to her friend before meeting with Julia and Adam, a precaution she had taken after growing suspicious of their actions. Her final act of defiance was a desperate attempt to make sure they couldn't silence her, and it was the key to unraveling the truth. The case becomes a media sensation. The small town is rocked by the revelation that their beloved teacher and a grieving father had been carrying on a dangerous affair, and that the consequences of their lies led to the death of a young girl who had tried to expose them. Julia's career, her reputation, and her freedom, all destroyed by a single mistake, and all because they underestimated the girl they thought they had silenced forever.